At the gala, Harper, the billionaire heiress, was pulled into my arms right in front of all the power players. Breathless, she tugged at my tie and whispered in my ear, "Jax, the way you just dropped $10 billion for me. It was so hot it's driving me crazy. Welcome to Windfall, Lord. An exciting story is about to begin." I swear, I definitely didn't drink any bootleg liquor last night, but when I opened my eyes, it felt like a power drill was going rogue inside my skull, accompanied by a cold, mechanical female voice that gave me goosebumps. Ultimate Tycoon system activated. Current host bound. Jackson Vance. I bolted upright from my second-hand mattress, its spring severely warped. Gasping for air, I looked around. It was still my dilapidated Brooklyn apartment that cost $1,500 a month. In the corner, a stack of pizza boxes was still emitting the sour stench of leftovers. What the hell? Who's speaking? I slapped my face, thinking I was still dreaming. The mechanical female voice completely ignored my shock, continuing to broadcast in my mind with a flat, emotionless tone. Initial capital distribution rules activated. Current salary per second is $100. In other words, for every second that passed, another $100 would appear in my account. I froze. $100? Every second? I scrambled to grab my phone from beside the pillow, unlocked it with my fingerprint, and opened the Bank of America mobile app. The moment the screen lit up, I felt as if someone had squeezed my heart with all their might. The account balance showed $300. A second later, the screen automatically refreshed. $400. Another second. $500. $600. $700. Those green numbers were jumping frantically across my retinas as if they were on stimulants. I rubbed my eyes and gave my thigh a hard pinch. Hiss, that hurt. This wasn't a dream. I had actually traveled to a parallel America and been struck by a pie-in-the-sky system. If the money keeps growing like this, will I become the richest man in the world? I swallowed hard and asked tentatively in my mind. A mechanical female voice ruthlessly interrupted my fantasy, warning me that there is no such thing as a free lunch. The system's core mission was extreme consumption. Within the next 24 hours, I had to spend every single cent of the funds issued by the system, leaving nothing behind. During these 24 hours, the system would issue a total of $64 million. $8,640,000? I nearly rolled off the bed. Spending almost $10 million in a single day? This was more exhilarating than robbing a bank in Hollywood. Not only that, the system's voice suddenly became heavy with a sense of oppression. It warned me that if even a single cent of system funds remained in my account when the 24-hour countdown ended, the system would trigger a penalty mechanism, and my heart would stop beating within a second. In other words, I would be obliterated on the spot. At the mention of the word obliterated, a cold sweat instantly broke out across my back. The system then added that if I successfully spent all $8,640,000 within 24 hours, as a reward, tomorrow's per second salary would increase by an additional zero on its current basis. That is, $1,000 per second. Spend it all, and the amount adds a zero tomorrow. Fail to spend it, and you die instantly. This isn't some god-tier tycoon system. This is a death warrant from the Grim Reaper himself. I glanced at the time on my phone. Exactly 8 a.m. The hourglass of the countdown had already begun its ruthless trickle. The system rules stipulated that the money must be used to purchase physical goods, services, or legitimate business investments. Direct gifting or destruction of cash was strictly forbidden, and I could never reveal the system's existence to anyone. Time is money, and right now, that phrase is literal. I quickly threw on a pair of jeans and a black t-shirt, rushing out of the apartment without even washing my face. As I sprinted downstairs, I dialed the number of my best friend, Zeke Navarro. Zeke is a geek who hustles second-hand electronics and car parts in Queens. As long as you have the money, he can get you anything in New York. Hello, Jax? You better have a good reason for waking me up at this hour. I was gaming until 4 in the morning last night. Zeke's muffled grumbling came through the other end of the line. Zeke, get dressed and get that beat-up Honda Civic of yours to my building right now, immediately. I shouted into the phone while charging down the stairs. Bro, my car is out of gas, and I don't have any money. I just transferred $10,000 to you for gas and your trouble today. Now get your ass down here immediately. To test the availability of the funds, I opened the transfer app and sent $10,000 directly to Zeke's account. The moment the operation was completed, a green checkmark for a successful transfer lit up. The money actually went through. Moreover, in the few short minutes of this phone call, my account balance had quietly surpassed $40,000 and was still skyrocketing at a frantic pace of $100 per second. My God! Zeke erupted into a pig-slaughtering scream on the other end of the line. Jax, did you rob a Federal Reserve armored truck? $10,000. It's really $10,000. Cut the crap and be downstairs in 5 minutes. If you perform well today, I'll show you what it truly means to spend money like water. Hanging up the phone, I stood on a dilapidated Brooklyn street and took a deep breath of the slightly chilly morning air. Looking at the numbers ticking upward on my phone screen, The trepidation I had felt earlier was now entirely replaced by a near-manic state of excitement. $8,640,000. 24 hours. New York. Are you ready for the storm? I'm about to start throwing money around. Zeke's beat-up Honda Civic, its exhaust pipe belching black smoke, screeched to a halt in front of my apartment building in a manner that suggested it might fall apart at any moment. I yanked the car door open and slid into the passenger seat, which still reeked of a mixture of cheap corn chips and motor oil. Zeke, sporting a head of curly hair as messy as a bird's nest, stared at me with bloodshot eyes as if he were looking at an alien. Jax, tell me the truth. Did you sell a kidney or some other organ on the dark web? Zeke gripped the steering wheel tightly. What's the deal with that $10,000? Cut the crap. Zeke, drive to Manhattan. Head to Fifth Avenue. I ignored his question and gave a direct order. My current account balance had already surpassed $90,000 and was still skyrocketing at a visible pace. Time was my lifeblood. I couldn't afford to waste it on explanations. Zeke swallowed hard and slammed on the gas. The Honda Civic let out a pained roar as it sped toward Manhattan. At 9:30 a.m., we pulled up in front of Empire Motors, a top-tier supercar dealership on Fifth Avenue. This shop specialized in providing the rarest custom-edition sports cars for Wall Street financial moguls and Hollywood stars. Zeke and I stepped out of the car. Compared to the successful individuals in their sharp suits surrounding us, the two of us, in our wrinkled t-shirts and ripped jeans, looked like vagrants who had just wandered out of a slum. As we reached the entrance of the showroom, a white salesman with slick-back hair and a custom-fitted suit coldly blocked our path. The name tag on his chest read Brad. Gentlemen, I think you might be in the wrong place. Take a left at the next intersection. There's a discount shop for used Fords there. Brad looked me up and down with an utterly contemptuous gaze, a mocking sneer playing on his lips. This is Imperial Motors. The price of any single tire here is enough to buy that beat-up Honda of yours 10 times over. Zeke's face turned bead-red with anger. Just as he was about to step forward to argue, I pulled him back. In this parallel world where money is everything, any verbal sparring was a waste of time. I bypassed Brad directly and strode into the showroom, my eyes scanning quickly over the gleaming metal beasts. Hey, you can't go in there. Security! Brad shouted behind me, exasperated. My gaze locked onto the supercar at the very center of the showroom, standing there like a black phantom. It was a limited edition Bugatti La Voiture Noire. Its streamlined carbon fiber body exuded a suffocating sense of violent aesthetics under the lights. That black Bugatti, how much? I turned to look at the catching up Brad and asked coldly, Are you out of your mind? Brad was completely livid. That's a Bugatti La Voiture Noire, the only one in the entire U.S. It's priced at $2.5 million. A hillbilly like you couldn't earn that much in several lifetimes. Now get the hell out of here. $2.5 million. Right. I pulled out my phone and checked my account balance. It currently stood at $260,000, clearly not enough to buy the car in full. But I didn't panic at all. In my mind, the cold, mechanical voice of the system chimed in right on cue, reminding me that my current balance was insufficient for a full payment. The system offered a pre-authorization service for large transactions. I could freeze all funds in my current account as a deposit, and the system would provide temporary financing for the remaining balance. As long as I repaid the temporary funds before midnight tonight, it wouldn't be considered a violation. Perfect. These rules were tailor-made just to let me spend money like crazy. I walked straight to the VIP reception desk in the showroom, grabbed a Mont Blanc fountain pen, scribbled a line on a blank letter of intent, and slapped it hard against Brad's chest. Swipe it. A full $26,000 as a deposit, and I'll settle the remaining balance in one lump sum before 5 o'clock this afternoon. I pulled that black Bank of America debit card from my pocket and tossed it onto the table. Brad looked at me as if I were a madman, but he picked up the card with a cold sneer and walked over to the POS terminal. Fine, I'll give you exactly what you want. If the payment doesn't go through, I'm calling the police immediately to arrest you for being a fraud and disrupting our business. Beep, transaction successful. Deduction of $260,000. The POS machine spat out a long receipt. The sneer on Brad's face froze instantly. He stared intently at the numbers on the slip, his hands shaking like a leaf. How is this possible? Brad stammered, cold sweat beading on his forehead. Bring me the keys to that Bugatti, I said, leaning my hands on the table and staring him down. Now. Immediately. The store manager, alerted by the commotion, came rushing over. When he saw the receipt for the $260,000 deposit, he instantly adopted an extremely fawning smile and unceremoniously kicked aside the dumbstruck Brad. Distinguished sir, Brad is a new idiot. Please don't take offense. The keys will be brought to you immediately, the manager said, bowing and scraping. I don't just want this Bugatti. I turned my head to glance at the showroom and pointed to several other equally expensive sports cars nearby. That red Ferrari LaFerrari, that silver Porsche 918, and that Lamborghini Veneno, pack them all up for me. Charge it to my pre-authorized bill. The money will arrive on time at 5 o'clock this afternoon. The entire showroom instantly fell into a deathly silence. Zeke, standing nearby, was completely petrified, his mouth hanging open wide enough to fit an apple. A few minutes later, I received the keys to the Bugatti La Voiture Noire. As for the Honda Civic, I told the manager to throw it straight into the junkyard. Get in, Zeke. It's time we bought you some decent clothes. I pulled open the Bugatti's iconic scissor door and slid into the cockpit, which was filled with the scent of luxurious leather. Zeke climbed into the passenger seat like a sleepwalker. The V16 engine erupted with an earth-shattering roar. The black steel beast shot out of the Imperial Motors gates like a cannonball, heading toward the high-end luxury district of Fifth Avenue. Jakes, Zeke shouted, his voice trembling as he gripped his seatbelt against the violent force of the acceleration. Who the hell are you? Did you sell your soul to the devil? I watched the green numbers on my phone screen begin to dance frantically once again, a defiant smirk curling at the corners of my mouth. Sell to the devil? No, Zeke. From this day forward, I am the god of this world. The haute couture boutiques of Fifth Avenue, the Patek Philippe flagship stores, and even the most elite caviar restaurants, over the next few hours. Zeke and I tore through them like a whirlwind of apocalyptic indulgence. At 4:55 p.m., I stood in the VIP suite of a private bank at Rockefeller Center, watching as the final $2 million were transferred to the Empire Motors account, officially settling the remaining balance on those supercars. The very second the green notification for the successful transfer popped up, the bone-chilling death countdown in my mind vanished instantly. In its place was the heavenly sound of a system upgrade. Congratulations to host Jackson Vance for successfully completing the first day extreme spending mission. $8.64 million has been cleared. System level upgraded to level 2. Per second salary reward has doubled. Current per second salary, $1.000. A new round of the 24-hour spending mission has begun. Countdown starting now. $1,000 per second. I felt like my brain was about to crash from a lack of oxygen. That's $60,000 a minute. $3.6 million an hour. And over an entire day. That's $86 4 million. I took a deep breath, forcing down my racing heartbeat. This thrill, like throwing money away while standing on the edge of a cliff, was absolutely addictive. Since the money had increased, my spending targets had to upgrade accordingly. Sports cars and luxury watches could no longer satisfy my ravenous appetite for consumption. Zeke, I turned to look at my best friend, who was currently smirking while clutching several limited edition Hermes crocodile skin bags. Where is the most expensive property for sale in New York right now? The most expensive? Zeke bounced up from the leather sofa, pulling out his battered phone to search rapidly. Manhattan's Billionaires Row, the penthouse duplex at 220 Central Park South. The asking price is $55 million, but I heard the owner is extremely picky and has rejected countless requests from the nouveau riche. They only accept appointments from top-tier financial dynasties. That's the one. Let's grab a cab. I straightened my newly changed Seville Row custom suit, worth over $100,000, and strode out of the bank. Half an hour later, we stood beneath the ultra-luxury apartment building known as the Crown Jewel of New York. The lobby's decor was even more extravagant than the Louvre. The person responsible for receiving us was a senior real estate agent named Richard. Seeing that I was wearing a high-end custom suit but was a completely fresh face, a flicker of doubt flashed in his eyes, though he maintained a professional, forced smile. Mr. Vance, regarding the penthouse duplex at 220 Central Park South, there is currently a very distinguished guest viewing the property. That is our VIP, and I'm afraid it's not convenient for you to go up right now, Richard said, politely issuing a dismissal. Take me up, or I will buy your real estate firm immediately, and then fire you. I looked at him coldly, throwing out an offer he couldn't refuse. In my current account, funds were skyrocketing at a rate of $60,000 per minute. My confidence was strong enough to flip the entire building. Richard was stunned by the aura I projected. He swallowed hard and finally compromised, leading us into the private elevator that went directly to the top floor. The moment the elevator doors opened on the top floor, I even forgot to breathe for a split second. In a vast space exceeding 1,000 square meters, panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of Central Park's lush greenery and the Manhattan skyline. Sunlight spilled across the imported Italian marble floors, reflecting a dazzling brilliance. But standing before those massive floor-to-ceiling windows was a woman even more dazzling than this $55 million luxury penthouse. She wore a minimalist white silk dress, her long golden hair casually pinned up. Her profile was as perfect as an ancient Greek sculpture, and her ice blue eyes held a coldness and arrogance that kept everyone at a distance. Richard, didn't I say that I don't want any outsiders disturbing me while I'm viewing the property? The woman did not turn around, her voice like a cold wind from an ice cellar, chilly and heavy with oppression. Richard trembled all over and hurriedly bowed in apology. I am terribly sorry, Miss Monroe. This Mr. Vance insisted on coming up to take a look. Monroe? Harper Monroe? Zeke gasped beside me, whispering in my ear in a shocked undertone. Good God, that's Harper Monroe, the sole heir to the Monroe conglomerate, the notorious ice queen of Wall Street. What is she doing here? Harper Monroe slowly turned around. Her gaze swept over me like radar, carrying an unabashed scrutiny. The arrogance inherent to top-tier old money families was displayed to the fullest in her eyes. Mr. Vance? She arched an eyebrow slightly. In New York social circles, I don't believe I've ever heard that surname. Now you have. I met her gaze without flinching and strode toward her, stopping close enough to catch the scent of her expensive perfume, a blend of iris and balsam fir. I'm buying this house, I said, turning to Richard and stating it as a final decision. For the first time, a flicker of shock appeared on Harper Monroe's perpetually composed face, quickly replaced by a look of indignant fury. Mr. Vance, I think you've mistaken one thing. Harper looked at me coldly. I've already set my sights on this apartment, and the lawyers from the Monroe Consortium are currently drafting the purchase contract. $55 million is not something a nobody like you, who crawled out of some nouveau riche pit, can touch. Hearing her words, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. With the systems per second salary enhancement, $55 million? That was merely what I earned in about 24 hours. Richard, I ignored Harper's murderous gaze and directly pulled out a black card. If Ms. Monroe offers $55 million, then I offer $65 million. Full payment. Swipe the card now, and handle the transfer procedures immediately. If the owner won't sell, I'll raise it to $80 million. The entire penthouse was deathly silent. Richard's jaw nearly hit the floor, while Zeke stared at me as if he were looking at God himself. Harper Monroe's ice blue eyes narrowed slightly, sizing me up for the first time with a serious, searching gaze. In this world where money is power, I was undoubtedly the first person to ever use cold, hard cash to steamroll the Monroe Consortium. Jackson Vance. She murmured my name, her lips suddenly curling into a smirk that was both extremely dangerous and utterly captivating. Very well. You've successfully caught my attention. I looked at her, the frantic fire in my heart burning brighter and brighter. It seemed this $80 million mission was finally going somewhere. After purchasing that penthouse duplex, Harper Monroe didn't storm off in a fit of rage like a humiliated loser. Instead, she handed me a golden boss black invitation. It was for a top-tier charity gala held tonight at the Waldorf Astoria, an event attended by the most powerful plutocratic families in all of New York. Let's see if you have any other skills besides throwing money around like an unrefined nouveau riche. Those were the last words she left me with before departing. At 8 p.m., Zeke and I sat in a newly delivered Rolls-Royce Phantom, slowly pulling into the driveway of the Waldorf Astoria. My system account balance had already accumulated to a staggering $40 million, and it was still tirelessly ticking upward at a rate of $1,000 per second. With the mission deadline approaching at midnight, I still had over $40 million in credit left to squander. The ballroom was a scene of golden opulence, with champagne bubbles shimmering under the crystal chandeliers and a display of decadent luxury. Just as I picked up a glass of Ace of Spades champagne, I saw Harper in the center of the room, surrounded by a group of financial titans in sharp suits. Tonight, she had changed into a backless evening gown as deep as the night sky, looking so beautiful it was impossible to look away. But standing beside her was a man who made me incredibly uncomfortable. He was a young man with meticulously groomed blonde hair, wearing an ostentatiously flashy white tuxedo. He was surveying the entire ballroom with an arrogant gaze, as if inspecting his own private territory. That's Sterling Croft, Zeke whispered in my ear, his voice tinged with a hint of awe. Heir to the Croft family. They control half the shipping and private banking on the East Coast. A true old money titan. Word is, he's been relentlessly pursuing Harper. Sterling seemed to notice my stare. He set down his glass and, with a nauseating sense of superiority, swaggered over toward me. So, you're the jacks who showed up at 220 Central Park South like some country bumpkin and stole Harper's spotlight? Sterling looked me up and down, his lips curling into a mocking sneer. Listen, pal, I don't care which underground crypto scam you hauled those tens of millions out of, in the face of real heritage. You're nothing but a court jester on the brink of bankruptcy. Stay away from Harper. This circle isn't for people like you. I took a sip of champagne, looked at his punchable face, and smiled slightly. Sterling, right. I pulled out my phone and glanced at the time. Your so-called heritage, in my eyes, isn't even worth a second of waiting. Sterling's face darkened, and just as he was about to snap, the host on stage announced the main event of the evening. The charity auction was officially beginning. The first few lots were just boring famous paintings and antiques. I didn't even lift an eyelid. That was until the host presented a pair of rare blue diamond necklaces named Heart of the Ocean, with a starting bid as high as $5 million. I noticed Harper's gaze linger on the necklace for a few seconds. $7 million. Sterling was the first to raise his paddle, then looked at Harper smugly. A necklace like this is only fit for a woman as perfect as Harper. A burst of admiration erupted from the crowd, with many people flattering Sterling for his grand gesture. I sat on the sofa in the corner, lazily raising my paddle. $10 million. The entire ballroom fell silent in an instant. Every gaze, including those of Harper and Sterling, was fixed on me. Sterling's expression turned incredibly grim. To be openly challenged by a complete unknown at a New York charity gala was a massive insult to the Croft family. 15 million. Sterling gritted his teeth and raised his paddle again. 20 million. I didn't even change my posture, maintaining the same nonchalant expression. My account currently held over 40 million, and it was increasing every second. 15 million? I could earn that back in 2 or 3 hours. Jax, have you lost your mind? Sterling stood up, pointing at me and shouting. That's 20 million in cash. Are you sure your shell company's account can even clear that amount? 25 million. I ignored him and continued to raise my paddle. This time, even the host was stunned. This had far exceeded the intrinsic value of the diamond necklace itself. It was now purely a case of two men burning money in a battle of egos. 30 million. Sterling's eyes were bloodshot. This was nearing the limit of the personal cash flow he could mobilize. If he raised the price any further, he might have to tap into the family trust fund, which would incur the wrath of the elders. He stared at me intently, believing that 30 million would be enough to crush me. I sighed, set my champagne glass down on the table, and slowly stood up. It felt as though the entire room held its breath at that moment. Sterling, your understanding of money is so impoverished it's practically sleep-inducing, I said, looking at him and speaking in a tone light enough to be heard across the entire ballroom. $50 million. Boom! The entire ballroom erupted instantly. $50 million. For a single necklace. This was undoubtedly the most insane bid in the history of the Waldorf Astoria. Sterling slumped back into his chair, his face deathly pale. He had lost completely. Crushed and humiliated in front of all of New York high society in the most blunt and brutal fashion imaginable. $50 million. Going once, twice. Sold. Congratulations to the distinguished Mr. Vance. The auctioneer's voice was visibly trembling. I stepped onto the stage and took the exquisite velvet box containing the heart of the ocean. Then, under the gaze of everyone present, I walked straight toward Harper Monroe. Harper's ice blue eyes were shimmering with unprecedented shock and an indescribable radiance. I stopped in front of her, opened the box, and gently placed the dazzling blue diamond necklace around her long, fair neck. It's just $50 million worth of trash. It barely matches your dress, I whispered in her ear. Harper took a deep breath and looked at me, her lips finally curling into an incredibly radiant smile. That night, under Sterling's murderous gaze, I successfully spent $86,400,000, and my system was about to undergo an even more terrifying upgrade. The moment the midnight bell tolled, I was lying on a $500,000 custom bed in the penthouse of 220 Central Park South. In my mind, the system's mechanical notification arrived as scheduled, but it was more deafening than ever before. Congratulations to host Jackson Vance for successfully completing the Level 2 extreme spending task. $86,400,000 has been cleared. System level upgraded to Level 3. Per second salary reward critical hit doubled. Current per second salary, $10,000. A new round of the 24-hour spending task has begun. Countdown starts now. Today's spending target, $864 million. $10,000. Every single second, I bolted upright in bed, feeling the blood throughout my body rushing in reverse. That's 600,000 a minute, 36 million an hour, and nearly 900 million a day. This was no longer a matter that could be settled by buying luxury cars or mansions. Capital of this magnitude was enough to trigger a tsunami on Wall Street. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the Manhattan skyline that remained brightly lit. From this day forward, I was no longer just a nouveau riche upstart. I was going to become the apex predator of this financial jungle. The next morning, Zeke and I sat in the back of a Rolls-Royce, heading toward Wall Street. Zeke was still in a state of extreme euphoria over the fact that I had spent $50 million on a necklace for Harper the night before. His battered old laptop had now been replaced with the latest top-of-the-line Alienware. Jax, where are we going today? Are we buying the Empire State Building? Zeke asked, rubbing his hands together in excitement. No, Zeke, we're going to buy the future. I watched the financial news scrolling rapidly across the tablet. Look up. Euromatrix. Technologies. I heard their capital chain snapped because of their R&D into AGI. And those Wall Street vampires are about to force them into liquidation. Zeke's fingers flew across the keyboard. A few seconds later, he let out a sharp intake of breath. God, Jax, this company is a bottomless pit. Their losses last quarter hit $300 million. The Croft family's investment fund is shorting them, planning to scoop up their core code for pennies on the dollar once they go bankrupt. That bastard Sterling is the one leading this short sell. Perfect. A cold sneer curled my lips. Whatever Sterling wants, I'm going to snatch it right out from under his nose. At 10 o'clock in the morning, we stepped into the lower Manhattan headquarters of Neuromatrix. The entire company was permeated with an air of desperation, as employees were busy packing their personal belongings. In the top-floor conference room, I met the company's gray-haired founder, David Lee. He looked as if he had aged 10 years overnight. Sitting across from him was Sterling Croft, dressed in a sharp suit with an arrogant expression, accompanied by his legal team. David, stop struggling. Sign this bankruptcy reorganization agreement. And the Croft family can at least guarantee you won't end up sleeping on the streets," Sterling said arrogantly, tossing a document onto the table. "This is robbery. Our AI model only needs 1 more week to complete final testing. You cutting off the funding now is nothing but a ploy to steal my life's work." David slammed his hand on the table in fury. "That's business, David. It's a dog-eat-dog world." Sterling stood up with a cold sneer. "Since you don't want to do this the easy way, I'll see you in court. By the time I'm done with you, you won't even have your underwear left." Just as Sterling was preparing to leave, I pushed open the doors to the conference room. "Sterling, your understanding of business is just like your taste in women, so trashy it's hard to look at." I strode into the room with Zeke close behind, carrying a metal briefcase filled with documents. The moment Sterling saw me, his face turned a sickly shade of ashen. Clearly, the memory of being publicly humiliated by me at last night's charity gala was still fresh in his mind. "Jax, what are you doing here? This is a top-tier Wall Street and a scene, not a place for a nouveau riche bumpkin like you to interfere," Sterling barked. "I'm here to teach you what a real acquisition looks like." Ignoring him, I walked straight up to David Lee. "David, what is the current valuation of Neuromatrix? Including all of your debts?" David froze, looking at me, the uninvited guest who had suddenly burst in. He said hesitantly, "If you factor in the debt, the current market valuation is less than $400 million. "Very well," I nodded. "I'm offering $800 million. A full acquisition of Neuromatrix, assuming all your debts. And I will personally inject an additional $200 million as our end defunding for the final testing of your AI model." The conference room fell into a deathly silence. David Lee's eyes widened as if he were listening to some far-fetched fairy tale. "Are you kidding me?" Sterling jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. $1 billion? A complete nobody like you can produce $1 billion in cash? "David, don't listen to this lunatic's nonsense. He's just here to cause trouble." I didn't bother with words. I signaled Zeke to open the metal briefcase and pull out a proof of funds document, automatically generated by the system and authenticated with the highest level of clearance from Bank of America. "This is a proof of deposit for $900 million in cash, and it's increasing every second." I slammed the document onto the table, staring Sterling down. "Sterling, I'm not just buying this company. In the coming months, I'm going to use its technology to utterly crush the Croft family's tech empire. Now, take your bankruptcy agreement and get the hell out of my company." Sterling looked at the figures on that proof of funds, his face turning deathly pale. He knew that on Wall Street, cash is God, and I, right now, was the tyrant wielding an endless flow of it. After Sterling and his legal team slunk away in defeat, David Lee gripped my hand, his eyes welling with tears of excitement. "Mr. Vance, you are quite literally a savior sent by God. I am not God, David." I looked out the window at the iconic charging bull statue of Wall Street, a flicker of fanaticism flashing in my eyes. "I am just a man who must buy the world just to stay alive. And today, we have just taken over the future. On Wall Street, when you drop $1 billion to snatch away a prime piece of the pie, you are effectively declaring war on the entire established interest group." On the third day of taking over Neuromatrix, the Croft family's counterattack arrived as expected. These old money capitalists had been deeply entrenched in New York for a century, and they would never allow a Jakes who appeared out of nowhere to shake their reign. That afternoon, Zeke and I were in the office, fretting over the system account balance that had once again accumulated to $600 million. With only 8 hours left until the mission deadline, I had to spend nearly $200 million more. Suddenly, the lights throughout the Neuromatrix building flickered, and every computer screen instantly turned blood red, with a massive white skull popping up in the center of the displays. "Jax, our internal network is under a hacking attack." Zeke's hands flew across the keyboard, cold sweat beading on his forehead. "This is definitely a military-grade Trojan. They're trying to lock down the source code database of our core AI model." Before I could even speak, the internal phone on the desk rang. David Lee rushed into the office, panting heavily. "Boss, something big happened." Several mainstream financial media outlets on Wall Street suddenly broke negative news about us simultaneously, claiming our AI model has serious security vulnerabilities that lead to user data leaks. Not only that, several funds under the Croft family are frantically dumping stocks of downstream companies we partner with, creating market panic. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the hurried financial elites on the streets of Wall Street. Sterling's move was ruthless, a lethal combination of cyber attacks, orchestrated public outcry, and capital-level strangulation. Any normal emerging tech company would probably be preparing to file for bankruptcy by now. But unfortunately for Sterling, he was facing a cheater who raked in $10,000 every single second and was so frustrated by the lack of places to spend it that he wanted to run his head into a wall. I turned around, looked at the frantic Zeke and David, and couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Boss, are you okay?" David swallowed hard, thinking I had been driven mad by this sudden blow. "Okay? I'm more than okay. That idiot Sterling has practically handed me exactly what I needed on a silver platter." I walked up behind Zeke and patted his shoulder. "Zeke, Can you trace the IP addresses of the hackers attacking us? It's difficult. They're using multiple bounce points. And all the servers are overseas, Zeke said, gritting his teeth. There's no need to find them. I interrupted him directly. Who is the top hacking organization on the dark web? Get me in touch with them. Tell them I'm offering $50 million to buy the master control of all the Croft family's network security systems. If $50 million isn't enough, make it $100 million. If they get it done within 2 hours, I'll add another $20 million as a bonus. Zeke's eyes lit up instantly. That frantic light unique to geeks flickering in his gaze. This is a total curb stomp. Leave it to me, boss. I turned to look at David. David, isn't Sterling dumping the stocks of our downstream companies? However much he sells, we take. Contact all the brokerage accounts under our name. Buy everything up regardless of cost. I want to send the stock prices of those companies through the roof before the market closes today. But boss, that would require an immense amount of cash flow. Cash flow is the one thing I have in abundance. I took out my phone and looked at the more than $600 million in my account. This afternoon, I'm going to strip the Croft family of everything they have on the stock market. Over the next 4 hours, the entirety of Wall Street witnessed an unprecedented capital massacre. Sterling had originally thought he could easily short those stocks and trigger an avalanche. But he never expected a bottomless pit of massive capital to suddenly flood the market. No matter how many shares he dumped, the opposing side swallowed them whole, immediately turning around to drive the stock prices up to inconceivable heights. As the closing bell approached, the stock prices of several companies the Croft family had shorted did not plummet. Instead, they tripled against the market trend. This meant that in just a few hours, Sterling's fund was facing a massive liquidation loss of billions of dollars. At the same time, good news came from Zeke's end. Boss, it's done! Those lunatics on the dark web took the $100 million and directly paralyzed the trading systems of all the Croft family's private banks. Their servers are now like a naked whore, open for anyone to see. Zeke shouted excitedly. Beautifully done. I looked at the clock on the wall. I was still $200 million short of completing today's spending target of $864 million. I picked up the phone on the desk and dialed Sterling's private number directly. The moment the call connected, I heard the sound of things being smashed and Sterling's hysterical roaring coming from the other end. Jakes. You lunatic! What the hell have you done? Sterling's voice had completely lost its former arrogance, filled instead with terror and despair. I'm just teaching you who the real player is in this world. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at Wall Street. Sterling, your fund has been liquidated, and your banking system has collapsed. You are now facing massive margin calls. The Croft family is about to go bankrupt. What do you want? It's simple. I'm offering $200 million for a total acquisition of your near-bankrupt hedge fund. I said coldly. Sign the papers, and you'll have enough left to buy a plane ticket to South America. Otherwise, by this time tomorrow, the FBI will be taking you away on charges of market manipulation. The other end of the line fell into a deathly silence. A few seconds later, the sound of Sterling's broken sobbing came through, under the pressure of the system's extreme spending requirements. I hadn't just completed the mission, I had also conveniently kicked that century-old New York powerhouse straight into the dustbin of history. As the clock towers of New York City struck midnight, I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Neuromatrix headquarters, holding a glass of scotch. In my mind, the system countdown hit 0 right on time, followed by a mechanical notification sound as jarring as a nuclear explosion. Congratulations to host Jackson Vance for successfully completing the Level 3 Extreme Spending mission. The system level has been upgraded to Terra Grade, Level 4. Your per-second salary reward has increased by another 0. Current per-second salary, $100, 000. A new round of the 24-hour spending mission has begun. Today's spending target, $8, 64 billion, $100,000. Every single second, the whiskey glass in my hand shook violently, spilling amber liquid onto my custom leather shoes. 6 million a minute, 360 million an hour. In one day, $8 billion, $640 million. At this magnitude, Wall Street stocks and luxury mansions were as cheap as discounted toilet paper on a supermarket shelf. I had to expand my spending vision, expanded enough to shake the very underlying logic of this world. Just as I took a deep breath to try and steady my racing heart, the office door was slammed open. Zeke burst in like a madman who had seen a ghost, clutching his Alienware laptop, his face deathly pale. Jax, we've got a massive problem. Zeke slammed his laptop onto my desk, the screen displaying dense lines of dark web transaction code and radar scans. Those old fossils in the Croft family have completely lost it. They know they can't beat you in the capital markets, so they're flipping the table. They've just issued a kill order against you on the dark web. I narrowed my eyes, staring at the red bounty amount flashing on the screen. $20 million for my head? These old money families really are cheapskates. I sneered. This isn't a joke. Jax? Zeke was practically jumping out of his skin. The contract was picked up by an underground mercenary squad called Blood Spider. I just intercepted their comms, 3 unregistered black attack helicopters have already taken off from New Jersey. They're estimated to reach our building in 15 minutes. They're carrying heavy ordnance. They're planning to level this place. The shadow of death instantly enveloped the entire top-floor office. Any ordinary person would have been preparing their suicide note by now. But as I listened to the wonderful sound of $100,000 hitting my account every second, my mouth curled into an extremely arrogant grin. Mercenaries? Heavy weaponry? I walked over to the desk, pressed the speakerphone button, and dialed an encrypted number hidden deep within my contacts. Zeke, today I'm going to teach you a truth. When someone wants to solve their problem with you using bullets, what you do isn't hide, you buy the factory that makes the bullets. The call connected, and a man's deep, wary voice came from the other end. This is Titan Defense, the largest private military contractor in North America. You have the wrong number. Civilian. I have the right number. I'm Jackson Vance. I watched the red dots getting closer on the screen. My words coming fast. I heard Titan Defense has the top retired Special Forces operators in the country, and the most advanced fleet of attack helicopters. I want to buy your entire company, along with every bit of firepower under your name. There was a 2-second silence on the other end of the line, followed by a sneer. Mr. Vance, have you been watching too many Hollywood movies? Titan Defense is valued at over $5 billion. And we don't accept. I'm offering $5 billion for a full acquisition. Cash settlement. Immediate transfer. I interrupted him without hesitation, while simultaneously having the system activate the highest level large sum pre-authorization. I want every standby armed operative and helicopter you have near New York in the air within 10 minutes to protect the Euromatrix building. Shoot down any unidentified flying objects attempting to approach. Beep, transaction confirmed. $5 billion deposit frozen. The system's cold. Efficient voice echoed in my mind. On the other end of the line, the CEO of Titan Defense's breathing suddenly became heavy upon hearing the system notification confirming the wire transfer. For a private military company, $5 billion in liquid cash was a sum far too massive to refuse. Boss Vance, Titan Defense is at your service from this moment forward. Our Apache helicopter squadron is already on its way. Hanging up the phone, I turned to look at Zeke, who was still in a daze. The $50 billion is gone. There's $36.4 billion left. Zeke, get me in touch with that real estate agent in the Caribbean. The one handling Elysium Island, the place originally intended to be sold to the military as a secret overseas base. Jakes, you're going to buy a military island? Zeke's voice was trembling. That's right. Tell them I'm offering $3 billion for absolute sovereignty over the island. The remaining $640 million will be used entirely to procure the most advanced anti-missile systems and fortifications from major arms dealers. Before the sun sets today, I want that island turned into the most secure war fortress on this planet. 5 minutes later, a transfer of $64 billion poured out once again like a flood. Today's consumption task of $64 billion was instantly cleared by me in the most frantic and violent way possible. At the very moment the final fund transfer was completed, the deafening roar of propellers echoed from the night sky outside the window. 3 pitch-black blood spider mercenary helicopters appeared like ghosts in front of the building, the Gatling guns beneath their bellies already spinning and warming up. Jax, get down! Zeke screamed in terror. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, motionless, even taking a sip of my whiskey, because in the next second, 5 fully armed Titan Defense Apache helicopters roared out from between the Manhattan skyscrapers, surrounding the 3 black helicopters instantly like hunting falcons. There were no warnings, no negotiations. Driven by $5 billion, Titan Defense's fire control radars locked onto their targets directly. Boom! 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 Dazzling bursts of fire erupted in the New York night sky as Hellfire missiles, trailing long plumes of flame, instantly tore the 3 helicopters attempting to assassinate me into burning metal fragments scattered across the sky, like an incredibly expensive fireworks display. Through the explosion-proof glass, I watched the rain of fire swirling outside and downed my glass of whiskey in one gulp. The Croft family's final trump card didn't even manage to make a splash against my absolute financial empire. Next, I will lead my private army to take possession of my unrivaled Elysium Island. Exactly 3 months have passed since that fireworks show that shook the entirety of New York. When the system's ultimate notification tone echoed in my mind, I no longer felt the heart-pounding trepidation I did at the beginning. Even the hand holding my wine glass didn't tremble in the slightest. Congratulations, host Jackson Vance, on successfully passing all extreme spending tests. The system has been upgraded to the Supreme God level. Current salary per second, $1 million. The death penalty mechanism has been permanently lifted. You have become the veritable ultimate tycoon of this planet. $1 million a second, $60 million a minute, $86.4 billion a day. Over the past 90 days, I have used this terrifying cash flow, enough to make any nation's printing presses smoke and break down, to completely reshape the global capital landscape. As for the Croft family, Those fools who tried to solve their problems with bullets were hit with an indiscriminate short-selling campaign backed by hundreds of billions in absolute capital the day after their failed assassination attempt. Sterling was stripped of everything and sent to federal prison facing dozens of business fraud charges, while their century-old ancestral home in Manhattan was bought by me on a whim and converted into a public restroom open for free to all New York citizens. Under this absolute dimensional strike, the old money plutocrats of Wall Street had only two choices: surrender and wag their tails like dogs, or be ground into dust by the crushing weight of my capital. By perfectly fusing the powerful AI technology of Neuromatrix, the global military might of Titan defense, and the system's bottomless pool of funds, I established Genesis, a trillion-dollar empire spanning technology, military industry, and finance. Now, if I so much as sneeze on Wall Street, global stock markets shudder by 3 degrees on the Richter scale. In the Caribbean, the sunlight scattered across the azure sea like crushed gold. Holding a glass of Romani Conti, I stood on the top deck of the Leviathan, letting the warm sea breeze brush against my face. This 220-meter-long, nuclear-powered super yacht, built with aerospace-grade titanium at a cost of $3 billion, was like a floating palace on the sea. Directly ahead of the yacht lay my absolute domain, Elysium Island, a fortress strictly guarded by top-tier anti-missile systems and thousands of elite Titan mercenaries. Boss, here's the final report on last quarter's global asset acquisitions and AI model iterations. Zeke strolled over swaggeringly, sporting a pair of outrageously loud Hawaiian beach shorts and sunglasses. He was now the chief intelligence officer and tech overseer of the Genesis Empire, holding the technological keys to reshaping the world. Yet, in my presence, he remained the same ride-or-die friend who used to scarf down leftover pizza with me back in Brooklyn. Just leave it there. Zeke, go to the lower deck wine cellar and pick out a few good bottles. No shop talk today, I'm giving you the day off. I patted him on the shoulder. Zeke chuckled, gave an exaggerated salute, and tactfully slipped down the spiral staircase, accompanied by the crisp clicking of high heels on the teak deck. A pair of slender, soft arms gently wrapped around my waist from behind. A captivating fragrance, a blend of iris and fur, instantly filled my nostrils. I turned around and looked at Harper Monroe. She was wearing a wine-red haute couture silk gown today. The sea breeze had tousled her long blonde hair slightly, only adding to her immense charm. Around her fair, slender neck, she still wore the heart of the ocean blue diamond necklace that I had dropped $50 million on years ago. The once high and mighty, arrogant ice queen of Wall Street had, at this moment, melted into the gentlest of waters within my arms. After witnessing the devastating speed with which I built a trillion-dollar empire, the Monroe Consortium chose total dependence without a moment's hesitation. And Harper, the flawless old money heiress who had interests and power etched into her very bones, finally understood one thing. In the face of the true king of the world, her only choice, and her wisest one, was complete submission. What are you thinking about, Mr. Vance? Harper's ice blue eyes shimmered with an intoxicating light. She tilted her head back slightly, her red lips parting. The entire world is already beneath your feet, and even the Federal Reserve has to take its cues from you. Is there anything left that you're not satisfied with? I lowered my head, gently kissing her forehead, and naturally wrapped my arm around her slender waist, pulling her close into my embrace. I recalled that early morning 3 months ago, on a second-hand mattress in a dilapidated Brooklyn apartment, drenched in sweat and driven to the brink by the system's death countdown. Back then, a salary of $100 per second was enough to make my heart race, and I ran through the streets of New York like a madman, throwing money away just to stay alive. But now, the numbers ticking in my account have become a meaningless astronomical symbol, so vast that I can't even be bothered to count them anymore. I was just thinking, I said, looking at Harper's breathtaking face, a trace of an arrogant and casual smile playing at the corners of my mouth. If spending $1 trillion to buy the development rights to Mars might be a little bit boring. Harper burst into laughter. She reached out her slender fingers, gently stroking my cheek, her eyes filled with unabashed obsession and adoration. The system's ticking has completely faded from my mind. The countdown of being chased by money has ended. But for Jackson Vance's trillion-dollar empire, a new era has only just begun. To this crazy world, I raised my crystal glass, gazing out at my invincible fortress on the horizon. Harper smiled and raised her glass, clinking it gently against mine. The crisp sound of glass meeting glass drifted away on the sea breeze. To you, my king, the end.